next speaker is Kim Dicou. Of all the adventures Kim Dicou has experienced in life, mothering has been her favorite, the most difficult, and by far the most meaningful. She knows her life's greatest work will be found in the 6 great loves of her life. Today she shares her thoughts as her youngest son approaches his next big milestone. The title of the speech is Young Boys Should Never Be Sent to Bed. This is Project 2 from the Competent Communicator. Organize a speech. Time is 5 to 7 minutes. Let's welcome Kim Dicou.
Young boys should never be sent to bed because they always wake up older, and before you know it, they've grown up. Those words came from the pen of J.M. Barrie, the author of the legendary classic Peter Pan, the story of a mischievous boy who knew how to fly and never wanted to grow up. In my home, things worked a little bit differently. I have 3 sons who couldn't wait to be tall and strong men. It was their mother who wished they would remain small boys. I've sometimes wondered if my mother-in-law had some of the same feelings. She had 2 sons and 6 daughters. When my husband Troy graduated from high school in 1982, she wanted to send something with him from home. Something warm, something comforting. Raising 8 children in an 800 square foot home, and with little money, she decided to cut up squares from his old denim jeans and make a quilt, something that was heavy and durable. He took that to college and later into our marriage. This old quilt has at least 1 million miles on it from 34 years of picnics, camping trips, pretend forts, scouting adventures, and it has served as a welcome buffer between my keister and cold metal bleachers at football games. As you can see, it has been dearly loved. It's old, it's faded, it's been patched in many places, but it still remains a family favorite. This started a family tradition. With 3 grown sons of my own, I've given each of them a denim blanket when they graduated from high school. And I recently completed denim quilt number 3 for a handsome high school senior who will take that big step in May. I sat hunched over the sewing machine. I'm not much of a seamstress. Needle pricked fingers, moving the material under the needle. And late into the night, I let the memories play out. My mind tumbled back to a crisp September morning. I was standing over the kitchen sink washing dishes. The older boys were off to school, and I peered out the window and I was looking at the beautiful autumn air. The green leaves were changing into yellow and orange and red. Labor hit with enough intensity to command my full and immediate attention. With the history of speedy deliveries, I knew I didn't have a lot of time to dawdle. So I grabbed the car keys and drove myself to the hospital, where I somehow managed to hit every traffic light on red for the next 8 miles. My obstetrician and the expectant father, both traveling probably faster than what the speed limit would allow, met me in the delivery room so that all 3 of us could be present to welcome Jacob Samuel, who arrived shortly thereafter. In my mind, I think of a cute little tow-headed boy who didn't speak until he was almost 3. Clearly bright. Once he did begin speaking, it was in sentences. He had a built-in bounce and a formidable will. I I think of a little Cub Scout with messy hair, laboring hour after hour on the engineering of a wooden car that paid off with the trophy at the Pinewood Derby. I remember that horrible time of sitting in the stands, watching my son get beat up and pounded on during a 4-hour final karate test. His opponents were bigger, stronger, and tougher, but to his credit, my young son held his ground, and at the end of the day, he wore a black belt. I was so proud. I think of all the hours that we spent on Sunday evenings touring every church parking lot in American Fork while I taught him how to drive. I still can't parallel park. He had it in 20 minutes. I think of how handsome he looked in his tuxedo before his first prom. I think of all of those grueling hours he spent in the sun with his friends preparing for marching band competitions. I think of his excitement as he filled out college applications recently and learned of a full ride scholarship. And now, our youngest son, my little boy, next month will turn his tassel from left to right and plan for a career in aerospace engineering. And so I continued to stitch on in this quilt, hoping that in the good and right and necessary leaving of the nest, that he will take a tangible piece of a mother's love with him. Something warm and welcoming and comfortable for when I am no longer there. Quilts are merely things. Mother's love lasts. I caught up with this handsome guy, heavily invested in an after-school snooze a couple of weeks ago, and I put the unfinished quilt carefully over him so as not to disturb his sleep. I wanted him to test it for nap worthiness during a test drive. In retrospect, that was a big mistake. I wish I'd have shaken him awake immediately, because he'll only wake up one day older, wiser, and one day closer to graduation. Godspeed, my son. You've earned this milestone. Congratulations on your graduation. Now go rock the world.
Raylene, evaluating Kim's speech.
I enjoy his sense of humor. It brings a lot to our club. Everybody has different personalities, and that's great.
Oh, thanks.
Kim's personality is more serious. And she has a real sincere genuineness that makes me really enjoy her speeches. The topic of her speech was organize your speech. So she was supposed to go through an organization with her opening chronologically or through points or bringing us along in some way through the speech, and then the conclusion would wrap it up. I loved how she stepped it up a notch. She used a metaphor. She used an emotionally touching, beautiful metaphor. She talked about sewing, and as she was sewing this quilt, her mind started going through memories, this and that. That's how she brought us through. And then at the end, she finished with, as I completed that quilt, da-da-da. So that's the way she brought us through. Way to do, way to go, and just doing an amazing job in really bringing it up a notch, bringing it up 10 notches in expertness of presenting a speech. I wouldn't have thought of that. That was just brilliant and beautiful, poignant. The emotion that came out with that was amazing. You didn't have to get emotional because the way you were presenting your speech brought us all in with something we could tangibly see, with points we could feel, with telling us how he started out, how he was about ready to graduate and with a tassel, just through so many emotional visual aids. We were brought in emotionally into your speech. That made it very powerful. That made me cry too, just like Jill. I was trying to hold it back. No, I have to stand up and present, don't cry. Yet that's what I was feeling. I was just feeling so much emotion from it. course, I rated you top on every category because you always do an excellent job, and you did again. If there are any suggestions I could give, which is what I asked for, and you're probably at that point because you just do such a perfect job on everything, you're probably looking for any little bit that could help. That's very hard to do. It's very difficult to come up with any ways to improve upon your speeches because you do such a great job. When you memorize your speeches, you stand up here and you come through beautifully with the memorization. Everything is delivered perfectly. I remember a Civil War speech you gave with so many facts and chronological things. I'm just amazed at your memorization ability. Lately, you've been a little more natural in some of your speeches. Maybe joke a little, throw a little something in there and kind of laugh with us as we do it. I have really enjoyed that aspect of your speaking. That wasn't here this time. I would have liked to have seen just a little more naturalness in it. Not so much of the rote memorization, but sometimes just throw a little something in or just make it just a little more natural. And I think that could have made it just a 100 on the scale of 0 to